So, my name is Sunit Rikhi. I'm the visiting professor at SemiX. Joined it very early on, right after the formation of SemiX. And it is my honor and pleasure to welcome very special guests, and that's you. Some of you have come long distances, and all of you have carved out very valuable time from your schedule. And without you, we wouldn't have any discussion possibilities. So, on behalf of the organizing committee of this summit, I want to thank you for coming here and participating for the next 2.5 days. I will continue my kickoff message, but before that, I'd like to welcome two guests, special guests for this summit. One is Shri S. Krishnan. He's the Secretary in the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology in the Government of India. He's with us. And the other is Shri S. Sudarshan, who is going to bring us the Director of IIT's message. And so if I can request them to come on stage while I finish my kickoff so that I can pass them the mic. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'll go back to my kickoff message. We have spent, the organizing team has spent about a couple of months, maybe more, trying to make your time worth your while over here. And it'll be our intention to work hard during the next 2.5 days to do just that. So my intention now, before I ask our guests over here to speak, is to just give you the lay of the land and explain how this conference is structured and how you expect to spend the next 2.5 days. So first of all, our theme was carefully selected, and every word over here has a special meaning. Inventing our semiconductor future together. Whether we like it or not, there is a semiconductor future. And what it will turn out to be will depend on what and how we collaborate to invent it. And the word together is very important because without together, it is too complex, and the future will just happen to us as opposed to us inventing the semiconductor future. And so this is just a small step on the path to the collaboration and the togetherness that is involved in inventing our semiconductor future together. Our promise is an immersive experience. In some of my mails to you attendees, I have highlighted the immersive experience that we promise, but in addition to that, we also aim to make it a productive experience. And the way we describe that productive experience is that at the end of the summit, we have to identify some actionable items that move us along this journey that we started, SemiX started about a year ago. So that is the theme and the expectation from the conference. The expected attendance here is 330. Some of them are having breakfast at this point. And the speakers and panelists are 135, and that is quite joyous because 1 out of 3 people who are attending the conference are contributing with their thoughts, with their presentations, with their panel discussions, and they're all listed as speakers on the speaker page of the conference website. You also have a message from this morning that refreshes your memory on a link that you can go to and follow the agenda for the 2.5 days and any updates that we might make, even though we don't plan to make any updates. Another way to characterize the attendance in this summit is we have 15 different institutions, including IIT Bombay, that are represented here. There are 67 unique companies that represent the industry. And another 10 I identified as venture capital people who are here to see how they can learn and contribute towards entrepreneurship, which is a key prong of our summit. The other two being research and workforce development. Entrepreneurship is definitely a third and a very important element, and you will see how we will handle it. And there are sufficient companies who are representing that segment. So a total of 92 entities is what I could harvest from the attendee list. And welcome to all of you. The summit is structured along 3 tracks: research, workforce development, and entrepreneurship. We have research being co-chaired by Ritu Sodhi, who has tremendous technical experience in the industry. She's in power electronics and also is an advisor to the SemiX Center. Udayan Ganguly needs no introduction. He is the professor in charge for SemiX, and he will be speaking on the state of the SemiX after we are done with this part of the opening inaugural session. Satya Prasad and Swaroop are responsible for the track called Workforce Development. Satya has industry experience, he's in academia, and he's got plenty of experience in incubation. And Swaroop Ganguly, who is professor of EE department, also is professor in charge of Research Park at IIT Bombay. And then the entrepreneurship track is co-chaired by Vijay Parmar, who is not only an alum of IIT Bombay, he has a long history of semiconductor experience, incubation experience, startups, and Shaji Varghese, who has a lot of investment fund management experience, is currently working in the senior management of Society of Innovation and Entrepreneurship called SIGN in IIT Bombay. So with that, let me give you a structure of the 2.5 days. So we, as you know, we are in the inaugural session. This will take all of this morning. And after that, there is 5 sessions in the afternoon of the research track. They are all run in parallel, and you can see that on the website, or you can look at what session is where and the details of the session on the TV screen. One of them on this first floor and 2 on the second floor. It'll be followed by lab tours and exhibitions that are open, which is also listed in terms of what the lab tours mean on the detailed agenda on the website. On November 28th, which is tomorrow, we will follow those 5 research sessions with another 5 on 5 different topics. So you as an attendee can choose 2 research topics, unless you, like some of us watch movies, you go from one to another in the same go. But if you want to attend 2 sessions fully, you get to do that this afternoon and tomorrow morning in terms of research. In the afternoon, we have 2 sessions in workforce development. It includes a plenary session before they split it out into 2. And then there is an entrepreneurship session, which has quite a bit of detail listed in terms of what they're going to do for 3.5 hours in that session. Exhibits are open, and in the evening at 6:30, we invite you to join us for some food and networking at the Beetle, and transportation will be provided from VMCC to the Beetle, and I hope you join us. November 29th, which is the last day, is half a day, and in this half day, our focus is workshops. This is where we roll up our sleeves, collaborate, and try to make sense out of all the attendance we did on sessions. And we have workshops in each of the three areas, followed by a workshop report out right here. You will be back in this auditorium where we will have each of the co-chairs present workshop outputs, and also make a closing remarks, including a valedictory speech. So that's the lay of the land in the conference structure. Before I invite our guests to speak, I have to extend our heartfelt thanks. First, to our co-organizers called iHub, Divya Sampark in IIT Roorkee. And then we have 3 levels of sponsors. In the platinum level, we have Applied Materials, Synopsys, and IIT Research Park. In gold, we have Texas Instruments and Keynes Semicon. And in silver, we have Matson Technology, Global Foundries, and Horiba. So thank you to all of them for making this happen with their financial and other support. So with that, I'm ready to invite Shri Sudarshan to give us a director's message.
Good morning, everyone. A very warm and rather humid also welcome to Mumbai. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you here on behalf of our director, Professor Subhashish Chaudhary, who has been traveling, and myself. So IIT Bombay, like the other IITs in the system, have evolved over the years. In the early years, it was about education and also some industry interaction, and the IIT system did very well in both of those. By the 80s and 90s, and definitely after 2000, there was a lot of emphasis on research. And we see a lot of that impact today with our faculty here who are doing extremely well in research. But of course, once you succeed in something, the itch to do something more happens as a system, not just as individuals. But the IIT system and IIT Bombay in particular have also started looking at how to have impact. And there are many ways of doing it. We've had a lot of conversations with many people. And one of the ways of having impact is something which Shri Sunit Rikhi mentioned, together. And I'm very happy that we have this conference in the next few days, which is bringing together many people. But the question is it just together, who all together, for how long, and so on. This conference is a short-term thing. But there's a much longer togetherness which is happening. For example, we as faculty over here have a lot of focus on research. We have to guide our students and so on. But there are many things which we are not maybe good at, but we would like to get together with other people to do and to have an impact. And one of the things we have done in recent years is to create this position of professor of practice, so that eminent people from the industry can come back and work with us and help us do things which we would not have otherwise been able to do. And I'm very happy that Sunit Rikhi is one of the early joinees in that. And the most recent is also here, Rajesh Gopinathan, who was till recently CEO of TCS. So we are getting really amazing people. And I'm sure that these things will have an impact going forward. The other part of together is with industry. And what can we do with industry? The traditional view of what we can do with industry is we do research, hand it over to industry, industry goes and does something with it. Now that's works in some cases, but in most cases, that is not how progress happens. The industry itself, in the successful industries, do their own research. In fact, in some cases, they view universities as places that will train manpower and give them people who are ready to do research running off as soon as they join, which is also true. But of course, that's not the whole truth. The whole truth is that a lot of the long-term ideas come from universities. Industries often are more short-term focused. The semiconductor industry is a little different. What I'm saying is broadly speaking. So we need to work with industry on an ongoing basis, not just do some research, throw it over, but rather work with them, understand the issues, what are relevant, and help it drive our research so that it can become more impactful. But a third way in which the IIT system can help in bringing together people is to connect industry and government. As an independent party, we are trusted by everyone, whether it's a government, whether it is industry, or whether it's a common man on the streets. We are trusted that we will do the right thing. And of course, we have to work hard to make sure that happens, and it does happen. So what is the role here? The role here is in policy. We all recognize that the right policies can help drive the growth of industry across all companies. And the Indian government has done very well over the last several decades in getting the right policies in place. Of course, not every policy is perfect. Things need tuning. But over time, there have been multiple policies which have had a very positive impact, especially on the software industry. And now the time has come for policies for the hardware industry, and this is what a big part of the discussions which are happening today are. And I'm very happy that SemiX as a center is playing a significant role in this, helping understand what are the challenges and ultimately driving government policy in ways which will benefit the R&D efforts, the industry, and unless the industry becomes strong, our R&D will go nowhere. So this is, I think, a new aspect which the IIT system was not very focused on earlier. In fact, today we have a Center for Policy Studies, Ashank Desai Center for Policy Studies, which focuses on policies in general, but strong focus on technology policies also. So this is a third component of what the IIT system, in particular IIT Bombay, is doing. Now, SemiX itself is one of our newest centers, formed 6 months or year back. But SemiX didn't come out of nowhere. IIT Bombay has had a wonderful history of research success and industry alignment and industry cooperation in the semiconductor area. There are many companies which have cooperated and many people in the past who have helped drive this. Professor Vasi, for example, is viewed as the father of the semiconductor research and development at IIT Bombay and in India also. I don't know if he's here today. But we are very thankful that there has been a stream of fantastic faculty, some of whom are still here with us, some who have retired, some who have gone elsewhere to become directors or vice chancellors in other places. And we are very happy that they have helped drive this. So SemiX is starting from a very high base, and we expect it to fly even higher. So to wrap up, as an IIT system, we are committed to making change happen in India in multiple different ways, and to partner with others who are experts, do what we can do at the best, get people in who know other things which we are not good at, and partner with the industry and with the government. And I hope that today's conference will help in all of these targets. Thank you.
Okay, with that, it is my honor and pleasure to invite our chief guest, Shri S. Krishnan, from the Ministry of Electronics, the Secretary.
Good morning to all of you. Dr. Sudarshan, Deputy Director of IIT Mumbai, IIT Bombay at Mumbai, give it the correct name. I mean, anyone who comes from Chennai understands that difference. So. And Mr. Sunit, Rikhi, who's the organizer of this summit, Professor Udayan Ganguly, who invited me to this event. They kind of squeezed their way into my schedule on a particularly busy day, but it was such a compelling story that they told me about what has been going on and how this is growing that I think there was no hesitation at all in accepting the invitation. And the delegates who are attending this event, including today, which is a government holiday across the country, many of you have chosen to give that up and be part of this event over the next 3 days. And I think that's very significant and something that we recognize. I've spent many years in the civil service, but I'm not a technologist by training. I came to head a ministry that deals with technology, primarily. In Government of India parlance, it's called a scientific ministry, where we are expected to bring together research and industry, academia on one side and industry on the other side together. I would expect over the last 30 years it's been done with some degree of success and some degree of felicity. One interesting experience that I've had is that this particular ministry seems to be a preferred location from where to receive Government of India funding compared to many other ministries. This is a feedback that I received from very eminent scholars, some of whom I've known, including Professor Bhaskar Ramamurthy, who used to be formerly the director of IIT Madras and in charge of, I think it's called WIL, the Center for Wireless Communication. Came and told me that, look, your ministry is trying to push this to Department of Telecom. Department of Telecom is trying to take it over, but please keep it with you. We believe that research, even in the 5G and 6G area, is something that needs to continue with MeitY because ultimately all of this is electronics. And, I guess governments are places and bureaucrats are people who can bureaucratize just about everything, right? I mean, we can, even technology and science, which runs seamlessly, you'll put departments down on it and say, look, this part of electronics is not mine. But I think we are trying to take a larger view in this and say that electronics today has become so important and is so much part of what goes on in every other sector that we can't stay out of the mix in a way. And looked at from that context, the ministry itself views its mission very seriously. I think we are in a situation across the globe where electronics is going to be, or if it is not already, the largest manufacturing industry in the world. And India, as the largest country in the world in terms of population, certainly needs to have a significantly larger share in the electronics industry. Many things have happened in this sector, many ways in which the sector has changed over the years, even in India. We've lost ground. There was a time when the 97 ITA 1 agreement basically meant that a significant proportion of the electronics industry, which was homegrown up until that point, virtually disappeared. Many of us who grew up with brands like Onida and BPL and various other things, they just vanished one fine day. So you can realize that this can happen. And then a lot of the electronics industry in India today is also, a lot of it people do criticize that it is assembly units and basic components don't get made in the country. Prior to this, I used to be the secretary in charge of industries and investment promotion in the state of Tamil Nadu. And the one thing that I learned there is that even if the value add contribution in the electronics sector in India is just about 10 to 15%, the employment potential is so huge that the country really needs it. If you ever walk into Foxconn's unit in Shri near Chennai, you find that there are 50,000 people working there. Probably that is the largest factory shop floor anywhere in India. We don't have so many people work at one location. It also struck me at that point that most of what they were doing were assembling units. It also struck me that today you have probably a labor arbitrage, you have a PLI scheme from the government of India, which makes it cheaper for a company to produce here. The capital investment involved is not all that much. If you stop being competitive in that sector, or if you stop offering competitive advantage in that sector, the industry would just as easily close down and disappear. So which means that you really need to do something more to make sure that the industry stays on in India and continues to generate the employment and continues to provide us with a resilient supply chain, literally. And for that, you need to ensure that the component ecosystem also moves into India. Significant parts of the component ecosystem move into India. And that is probably the next stage of our mission. Before the advantage that has been created by the production-linked incentive scheme dies out, ensure that significant proportion of the component ecosystem also move and they start getting manufactured in India. In that, production may be a lot more automated. The employment may not be as much, but it doesn't matter. I think strategically and otherwise, it's significant and important for us to maintain the value chain. And for that, again, India as a country needs to do a number of things. We have to get a lot of things right. There are many moving parts. Government does its bit, but I think a lot more needs to be done by all of us, by the private sector, by academia and everybody else to make this happen. And the other really distinguishing feature with electronics in particular is that the value of the product relative to its size is very high. So it's not going to be like textiles or leather or something where you can produce the entire value chain within a country. You are going to be part of a global value chain, whether you like it or not. You know, this Apple iPhone probably costs in the US about $1,000, and probably the entire production cost of it will be maybe $150, max $200. The rest of it is really the intellectual property that the designers take. So we need to look at that entire upstream value chain to see which are the parts of these electronics that we can start making in India, and a very, very significant part of that are really the chips, the semiconductors, the micro or the nano electronics. India is a very interesting kind of place, and you know, the one thing that you also find is sometimes the time for an idea needs to come. I used to be part of the finance ministry about 15 years ago, and at that time, when we used to travel overseas, especially to the United States, to talk to people about investing in India, we met two distinct groups of people. We met investors, companies, for mostly Americans, mostly from overseas. And then we met the Indian diaspora, who were mostly professionals in various fields. Last year I was in the Bay Area in the Silicon Valley attending Semicon West, and we were trying to raise investment into Tamil Nadu, speaking to a lot of semiconductor companies. What's really happened and what's really changed is the investors you meet are also of Indian origin. Practically every major company, people at decision-making levels, people at key levels, like Mr. Rikhi here and many others in the audience, people of Indian origin, people talking to you about what it means to invest. Some of them telling you, a Qualcomm or a Broadcom telling you that, look, I'm a fabulous company and practically all my engineering and design takes place in India, most of it in Bangalore. You have in Bangalore probably about 25 to 30,000 design engineers from all over the country working there for a number of American companies, number of other companies all over the world. So then the question next is that, like the example from the cell phone, why is it that we don't own that intellectual property? Why is it that Indian companies don't own it? Why is it that they don't make that necessary investment? There are many such questions to be answered, and we are, as a country, thinking ambitiously. That same time that I used to be in the finance ministry about 15, 18 years ago, we were trying to push through a proposal from Intel at that time to make an investment in a ATMP plant in India. All that they asked, they'd looked at the location, they'd seen everything, and everything was up and about. They wanted quality power, quality water, all that was assured. Finally, they came to the government of India and said, we want $100 million as a grant. And, people were taken aback. There had never been a practice before of making an outright grant of this kind to a specific industry. It appeared to be common practice where they came from. They said, but this is what we want, and other governments are promising us this. It didn't happen at that time, and we didn't have a policy in place to enable that. And so we couldn't bring Intel into India at that point in time. We've come a full circle now. We've figured that policy needs to accommodate this. We have probably, in living memory, or at least in the history of Indian policy making, one of the most attractive semiconductor policies that I can think of. 50% of the capital cost being subsidized or given as a grant by the government. Whereas 100 million, we have $10 billion on offer. And what is even better, the money is on offer on a pari passu basis. As you invest, the government invests with you. Usually, we give that money only when you've finished your investment and you're in commercial production, so that our risks are covered. So here's a case where the government shares in the risk with you as well. So in terms of policy, I think finally we've got that mix right, but policy alone doesn't make everything. It's very important that people come together in a manner that makes sense to a lot of people. Many semiconductor companies come and meet us, or people who are part of that ecosystem. And you realize also that semiconductors is not just about the chips, it's not just about the silicon. There's so much else about it, so much else in terms of the equipment that is used, the tools that are used, the engineering behind it, the design behind it, the gases and the other materials which are required. So it's such a complex ecosystem, and which is again why it's a global value chain. It's valued so much. So now, in the light of all this experience, if we tell ourselves that even if we get about 35 to 40% of the entire value addition in this entire value stream into India, we are contributing not just to India's own cause, but we are contributing to a global cause in terms of having diversified value chains across the world. I think everyone realizes post the pandemic and post the geopolitical situation after that, given Ukraine, given now Gaza and everything else, everyone realizes that you need alternative value chains and alternative chains of supply. Supply chains are very, very crucial in the global system. as you're interlinked, you also need that there are alternatives which can take some of the slack when the situation so desires. While we think of cost competitiveness, I think resilience means that additional investments need to be made. So there is really an opportunity for India, and this is an opportunity that as a country we should not give up on, and it's an opportunity where we need to work to bring all this together. The time could be no better. We have the skill sets in India, we have in the institutions in India, we have people wanting to give back to this country from all over the world. Dr. Sudarshan was just remarking to me that, in some ways, most of the change in India comes through NRIs, and the most notable example being Mahatma Gandhi himself. So it's a very true example. So there could be so many lessons in history. I'm a historian myself, so I think it's useful sometimes to learn from history in terms of what it can offer you and what lessons it holds, and also learn what mistakes not to repeat. So to that extent, I think we are at a cusp. We are in a situation where, as a country, we have the confidence to venture into something which is big and bold. We have the standing globally to command this. We are trusted adequately across the world to be a responsible user of technology, so people would be more inclined to trust us with the kind of technology we need. Every second day in the ministry, this is also a question that we grapple with. There are agreements which prevent a lot of these sensitive technologies to be shared across the world. Again, history tells us. I was in CDAC day before yesterday in Pune, and the story of the supercomputing story of India is again a very interesting story. In the mid-80s, when Cray refused to give us the first supercomputer, and we built our own, and now very proudly CDAC displays a plaque which shows that Cray themselves gave them an award for having manufactured or having put together a supercomputer. So these could be historic moments. There are many obstacles we would have to overcome. There are many obstacles which are placed in terms of availability of technology, some of it for competitive reasons, others for strategic reasons. There are supplier groups almost on par with what happens in the nuclear space in terms of restricting what materials could be supplied and what technologies could be supplied. But I think the importance again is that India is now trusted enough to get waivers and exemptions on many of these, or get a special position to ensure that we have access to what we need to actually grow this sector. So in that context, I think I'm really very excited about what is being attempted in SemiX here. The plan that they speak of in terms of an open platform where industry and academia and government collaborate is just what literally the doctor ordered in terms of what we need at this point in time. I think it's a wonderful experiment which needs to spread across to other academic institutions in the country in terms of what they can do to bring in industry. Industry has been talking to us saying, can the government do more to bring in more of the academia in with us in partnership? Some of these companies here, Applied Materials, have been talking to us about it. Marvel Semiconductors have been talking to us about it, saying how is it that we relate with academia and research. In addition to in addition to academic institutions which have research bodies, we have research institutions, very strong research institutions, and that tradition in India. We just have to have this trusted and open relationship between industry and academia on one side, with the government supporting it through policy and through funding wherever it is needed, to ensure that in the technology space we really make the kind of moves and measures that the country really needs. And in that sense, I almost feel this is the first SemiX conference, so I think we are really at a historic cusp, and probably this is an initiative that would really grow along with the rest of the semiconductor industry in this country. when the first one comes in, and we already know that Micron is building their first factory here in India. When that comes and others also follow later in the year, we'd probably see significant differences being made, and government's own old initiative of the semiconductor laboratories in Mohali, which functions now under MeitY, will also be available for us, both as a research facility and as a sort of a startup facility for many other innovators in this field. I think these are exciting times, all through the value chain, from the stage of design to the stage of materials, to the stage of the technology, to the stage of actually making the chip, to possibly, who knows, a foundry soon enough. We should have that entire value chain here in this country in various bits. And I think SemiX is one more brick in that edifice, which kind of enables us to reach this overall goal of the country. And let me compliment IIT Mumbai for having anchored this, Professor Udayan, Professor Saurabh, and all of you for having put this together in a way that makes a lot of sense, for having made that additional effort to bring in industry. And let me again thank the industry and compliment you for having joined in this effort. The government is always there by your side, and we'll try our best to not get in your way, and try our best to try and do what you require us to do and what you want us to do to make this dream come true. Thank you very much for having me here this morning, and my best wishes to both this workshop and all that it entails for the country. Thank you.
So I'm going to be very brief in reacting to both our guests' talks. Just one word: encouraging. I think we all can agree we are encouraged by everything they had to say. So thank you very much. And with that, I think we're going to exchange places with Udayan. You can go and, because it will be easier to see what he has to say from your viewpoint there. So Udayan is a recent acquisition in my bucket of friends. Just 1 year old, our friendship, but I've never seen a more energetic guy, well, maybe with the exception of me, than Udayan. Come.
My slides are here.
Yeah. You have to go all the way back.
Thanks everyone for coming. Chief guest, Shri Krishnan, Deputy Director, Sudarshan. We actually call a lot of us our friends by first name. So it's a strange thing. In academia, we are very flat. We have been a year old now, and it's the right time for us to have the state of SemiX. This is our self-evaluation. We want to do it with you, and we want to see what you think of it. Give us your feedback, your brickbat, but we want to work together, and that's the most important. So the first time we started, we were told, what will SemiX be? How do you imagine SemiX? And it appeared to us, to me, looking back now, is that we were all colorblind, and we were asked to imagine a world with color. A year later, the details have been filled in. We can see color, and we can see what the world is in SemiX. And this is literally what we want to show you. There is a lot to be unpacked here, and we are growing. So what does it take to go from seeing, knowing something is there, to realizing it? Well, we can say that, children do it all the time. When you are children, you try to learn stuff. You really don't know where the child would be. So there's an old song which says, ke sara sara, whatever will be. And the child says, when I was young, when I was a little boy, I asked my mother, what will I be? Will I be handsome? Will I be rich? And so there are possibilities that a child has. SemiX is that child. But nobody knows. And it takes a village to raise the child. This is the village. These are all of us here. And the most important thing I feel is, of course, we are all here, but the child must learn to walk. And part of the walk is to fall down, to get up, to figure out, and to move forward. So we have to figure out how to be inventive. And we have to have a little bit of a sense of humor. So what sort of a child is SemiX? SemiX is a child where the village that's supposed to raise it is in some sort of a war. It is called chip wars. Some of us are aware of it. In fact, a lot of us are aware of it. And it's where there is a whole technology piece that is running our lives. We are growing as a digital economy. And as Shri Krishnan talked about, the more we grow, the more our hunger grows. And the hunger for chips has to be sated within the country to some extent. And a lot of it is not just the production, the manufacturing. It is also the value add, the IP, the know-how at different levels. So we've been, India Semiconductor Mission has been started, has initiated, and there's a very ambitious plan to put in the pieces of the puzzle. So this is the situation, and SemiX is supposed to grow here, and we have to help it grow, fulfill its mission. So I want to talk a little bit about myself, but I think most of you know me, so I will keep that short. I'll not go into that. So very briefly, India Semiconductor Mission, it's a pioneering mission. There are friends here, Anand, Charan, Applied Materials, Suraj, others. They are putting their money where their mouth is. And they are saying, we'll get it done. It is not necessarily clear how they'll get it done exactly, but I think they have a bunch of problems to solve. And there are also existing people, folks from TI, from other places. Keynes is starting up, Global Foundries, and they are all trying to figure out how to work this, how to make it go to the next level. So the question ends up being, why should India succeed? What is the main strength that we can derive our success from? And the one answer is people and talent. So people talk about capital. This is human capital. And if you play it right, this is really something that could be a game changer. What we need, of course, is training and The next question is, who does that well? So one of my advisors once told me this, that Udayan, I really don't care what you do in your PhD. What matters is what you do afterwards. Because in your PhD, you spend 5 years, and then you have a 30-year career. And that's when you produce your real work. So what can we say about the past talent and who has produced this? Well, we don't have to look very far. This is just IIT Bombay, and there are people from every top Indian institute where we can find people who have made significant contributions. The point here is that there is a difference. In the past, they have essentially been our BTechs and MTechs who have gone ahead, done PhDs elsewhere, and grown. Right? That was the large population. What is it today? IIT Bombay and most top institutes today are heavily research focused. And you can see people who are our recent graduates who are powering today's semiconductor companies in India. And the difference is that they are working on cutting-edge programs, cutting-edge technology, cutting-edge research. And this is a change in demographic that I think will make the big difference. So very quickly, where did the story start? I'm not a very formal speaker. A little bit of history is good. So you can see that on the 1983 semiconductor program gets set up. It's called the microelectronics clean rooms. You can see Professor Vasi. It starts with persons. Individuals are very important. Teamwork is very important. So there was Professor Vasi, Professor Lal, Professor Chandorkar. And things were chugging along. But this was still, a small lab working in a university and doing its own thing. 2006 was a landmark funding scheme by Ministry of Electronics, which said that you create a Center for Excellence in Nanoelectronics, a big lab here, but you promise to open it to the rest of the country, right? Because that kind of investment that you put cannot be spread out. You need an integrated facility, but with the integration, you also need access. So you can see the graph at the bottom. This is important because typically we don't evaluate ourselves, but you can see that 2010, this is publications in a reputed IEEE journal versus years. 2006, the center started. Until 2011 and 12, faculty got hired, people came in, and PhD students got trained. And by 2012 onwards, there was a rapid takeoff in the number of publications. So who's the benchmark here? This is National Chiao-Tung University, this is University of Berkeley system, University of California system, Chinese Academy of Sciences, and these are IITs. And this is what Indian academia and Indian policy together working has done. This is a phase transition, a systemic shift. 2020, we had essentially become number 3 in the world in terms of producing papers quantitatively, just the number of papers, right? We had started developing technologies for strategic industries, and 2023, SemiX was formed, 2022, late 2022, and ISM started to function, and so this is where we are. So a little plug for IIT Bombay. We are a world-class talent. So the momentum here is that there is talent, there are shared labs, and there's world-class output. What's most exciting for us is that if you look at the bottom left, we are a highly research-driven campus. 60% of our population, student population, are postgrad. Our labs are shared labs. We have an ethos of putting equipment together, putting capabilities together, and sharing. It is a part of how the system evolved with Professor Vasi and others, where we have open access. And then the ministry's position on letting our facilities not just be used by people across the campus, but also across the country through the Indian Nanoelectronics Users Program was the amplification of the same policy. World-class output, there are many things. I think one of the things, I will not belabor this, but there are demos today. There are demos, there are posters, and you will have lab visits, so you will be able to see them for yourself. There is gallium nitride technology, which is on denial to India, memory technologies, which are transferred to manufacturing, germanium transistors, which are collaborations with Applied Materials, NAVIC chip, neural network chip, Ajit processor, soil sense, diamond magnetometers. And these are just to name a few. So this was the momentum that we talked about. But the question that we asked as a community was, how can IIT Bombay contribute to India Semiconductor's mission? And our director said in unequivocal terms that we needed to integrate key resources and talent across the campus, across all disciplines. So this is the integration that is needed. There's also integration between academia and industry. And then we need to create a platform. This is a platform to use, right? And this platform, hopefully, will serve all of us in a way that makes sense. So we have to figure out what makes sense, and that is part of the discovery process. That's part of the dialogue. And hopefully that will lead us to global leadership. That's the aspiration. So very quickly, the mission is R&D, and this R&D has to be industry focused. That's why we are here. We have called industry folks. They are our partners, and they need to tell us how to do this. They need to partner with us. The R&D should lead to translation or to incubation. Ultimately, we have to have the value realized, and we have to understand the business of realizing value from R&D. All this typically leads to training. As we said, training and talent and workforce are the most critical element that academia produces. And when we do that, we learn what is missing in the system, and that's where policy comes in. So this is what the mission of SemiX is. The second is to have an industry affiliate program. This is the skin in the game principle. If we are doing the right thing, are our partners ready to engage with us with their resources and their ideas? And the last piece is incubation. So overall, we have a very synergistic mission with the India Semiconductor mission, and this was what we thought that we'll start off with, right? But then we did not know what to do. How did we achieve this, right? And of course, we realized that faculty are faculty. We do what we do. Students are students. We have done what we can do with them. What gives us the energy to take it to the next level? Who tells us what to do? How do we go forward? And the answer is typically what an engineering student would do, which is to talk to their seniors, right? To talk to their well-wishers, to figure out where the right advice can come from. So the place to get advice on silicon has to be the Silicon Valley. So we went ahead, we told our friends, hey, can we come over? Can you get a bunch of people who are leaders in this to talk to us and let us make a pitch about what our ideas are? And so we went, and they said, Bay Area, our friends are there. It was a Samsung location. And they said, why don't you use Samsung premises to have this IIT Bombay event? I said, great. So we drove over and we saw Samsung. In the driveway, we saw the first time the sign of SemiX in an international land. And it was the first time it had come out of our heads, out of our presentations into the real world. And we knew that, this was real. We came out, we got grilled. We went to a conference room, and there was Silicon Valley executives. A bunch of them were sitting, and they grilled us. They said, what is your it? What are you selling? Why will people work with you? And then when they helped us polish stuff, we went back and we presented it to about 50 odd people who joined that day. And we had a great conversation. We realized that there was a gap and there was a need for people to help and engage and guide us, right? So people like Sunit were there, Swaroop went, and you can see that we are pitching our industry affiliate program. And there were people who are saying, hey, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. We also talked a lot about our 2 years of experience, 1.5 years, in developing India's semiconductor research center proposal. This is actually very interesting because as a faculty, I never think about, what is India going to do broadly in a formal manner. Informally, we talk over things. Nobody's paid us to talk about it, right? So this was an experience we did. And we got alum together, we talked about it, and we came up with a detailed project report. The project report was great, and it's gone on to the India Semiconductor Research Center. But most importantly, it taught us what the considerations are. We talked about 70 odd organizations, about 120 people. And each of them changed the way we thought. And in some sense, the major learning was this. Government needs to do policies which are broad. Policies are big, they affect everybody. There's a huge amount of risk mitigation that the government needs to do. Yet, we keep discussing risk. The question is, can we do a pilot and understand the risk? And if you do a pilot, it's small, you understand the risk. If it works, great. If it doesn't work so well, you retool, you modify, you tune it, and you make it better. And this is where we thought SemiX came in. SemiX is a wonderful place to do pilots. We don't have to do things big. We can do great things in a small pilot, show that things work, and then let the government figure out how to amplify things, right? So now we'll quickly talk about, how we made things, what our journey was. And this is a journey to share because growing an institution is like growing a baby. There are many steps, there are a lot of uncertainties, and we had to have a fantastic adventure. So the first piece was to engage talent. On the left-hand side, you can see the faculty. Faculty are fantastic to work with on anything new. They are out-of-the-box thinkers. They will immediately say, this is something we are happy to do. This is part of their nature. Then came our advisors. We have fantastic set of friends. And they would say, look, I'll give you a couple of hours a week. Every Saturday, we would come, we'd refine ideas. People would come, play badminton and come back and log in, right? And this is the way we worked. But then we realized that, okay, we have great ideas. Who's going to implement them? Is it going to be the same set of faculty, the same set of students? So we came up with the idea of hiring an executive. Who's that executive? Who will jump in when there is no certainty, leave their jobs? We came up with this idea of a part-time executive program. We got people in who had experience and who wanted to spend 8 hours to 10 hours a week getting things going. And if you see the summit, the kind of execution energy that has come in, this is where it comes from. people who have actually spent the time. Then we said, okay, you want to help, you have ideas, you have done some execution, do you know the lie of the land? The way to do it is to come into IIT Bombay, spend the time, understand where you stumble, where we stumble. And so we created a visiting professor practice position. We hired Sunit, and that has been one of our smartest moves as a pilot again. Took it through the system. There is Partha. And then ultimately we realized that, okay, things are so intense now, we need to have a full-time executive. And we figured out who is there in Bombay who can do this, and we have found Ranjan and others. Ranjan, of course, is leading it, the chief business officer. We got that thing through the IIT Bombay system. So we have an organization, we have talent. What is the next thing? Industry affiliate program, skin in the game. And do we really have the right proposal? Well, that wasn't difficult, because what we did was we asked the industry, what do you want? And we got that part done. There was workforce focus, there was research focus, entrepreneurship focus. And organically, once we did that, it was fairly easy for us to get industry affiliate members. Now, what are these industry affiliate members? Are they paying for research? Are they paying for training? The answer is no. They are paying for the platform in which we can pilot new ideas, and we can create things that don't exist. And I think that is very powerful. The next thing was training. We asked the question, how do we train? Should IIT Bombay be training? Absolutely. We are very well branded. We can always, announce a program and people come and get trained. Is that the right way to do training? And the answer is, well, who's the training for? It's for the industry. Why can't we get them and create a program which makes sense to them? And that's when we partnered with Applied Materials Global Foundries, launched a training program, and there was industry engagement. Industry people came in, attended the program. But the upshot of this is that now we have a packaging course with Cairns. Gujarat teachers came and did training with us. Applied Materials is pushing for their new college grads to be trained with IIT Bombay. With Synopsys, we are pushing a major training program. So the proof is in the pudding. And we are focused enough to push this and do what makes sense, is something that Mr. Krishna talked about. Infrastructure, we cleaned up. Our labs are spick and span. For 15 years, we've been just working on these labs, but SemiX is a lightning rod. When new things happen, people get new energy, and we try to invent what we already have and see them in new light. Of course, there are struggles. Some of our buildings are dying because we are 60, 70 years old. We'll work out those plans. Building new labs. This was record 2.5 months between coming up with this idea with Avik here in the Bay Area, saying that Avik said that, look, we need to get Indian group going in terms of Synopsys R&D, right? And they said, okay, so, and where do we get them from? IIT Bombay is a good place to start. We'll get this done. 2.5 months later, we had the signing with a fantastic training program, a lab named, and a program kicked off. And we have a 3-year contract with Synopsys on this. Startups, you'll see a lot more today in the entrepreneurship session. We are working with Sign at IIT Bombay and many other incubators. And that brings us to the last piece, which is the SemiX Annual Summit. So what is this? People come to visit us. We are not ready. We put up a haphazard show, and we really don't know whether we made impact. SemiX is going to have an annual open house. This is that event. We will dress up, we'll put on our best show, we'll show you how we do our work, and we'll invite you to participate, contribute. The other goals are, of course, to create this stakeholder platform. So one of them is to show what we have, which is share to create this platform. The second is to share our industry-relevant research, training, translation, and startup, and to develop a roadmap. What are we playing for? What should we do? And what should we not do? And this is part of the research sessions. Sunit would have talked about it. So half the research session would be what we do, and half of it would be industry folks telling us where we should collaborate, what we are not doing, and what we should be doing. And when the should happens, the next part has to be planning, execution, and developing infrastructure. So we will have to come up with a plan. We will have to execute. And in the next year, when we have the second SemiX annual State of SemiX address, we will take stock and see how we have done. The last one is, of course, accelerate semiconductor startup. We have a bunch of VCs, bunch of startups here, and we'll see how it goes. This is the hardest one. And finally, from all this learning, hopefully we will come up with something that is tangible, something that is workable, something that makes sense to influence policy and the ecosystem. So this is the SemiX 1 year. Can we figure out a way forward together? Is this platform the compelling program, the compelling idea that makes sense? And the answer is, why? How can it not? We have all the right minds here. And we are learning to walk, but we have the right people in the room figuring out how to make it happen. Academia, industry, alum, well-wishers, government, and of course, the talent that we nurture. So that's where we got it from. Let us invent our semiconductor future together. There has to be some inventiveness. It doesn't work off the bat. And that's where the pilots come in. We will do the pilots. So the next step is, of course, a wonderful keynote panel. And the question, of course, is that Industry Academia Consortium, can it enable a more effective path for ecosystem development? And we'll hear from people who are feeling the pinch, who need the solution, and are willing to do what it takes. So with that, thank you, and it's been a great pleasure to share our minds with you, and hopefully we'll come up with wonderful ideas and implement them and pilot through SemiX in the year to come. Thank you very much.
All right, so we will take a well-deserved 15-minute break, but make it 15, not 20. Okay. I'll see you at, well, actually 13-minute break.
This is intense speaking.
13 minutes, you calculate, okay? We're back in 13. Yeah, where did, Udayan, Joy. Okay, if I can ask you to take a seat. We're going to start momentarily. So I'm very glad that the organizing committee decided to forego traditional keynote speeches and replace that with a much wider variety of people who can share their thoughts in a keynote panel. And I hope you find it useful and interesting. So joining us on this panel are people who represent academia, industry, and venture capital. So we have 8 people on the panel. I will have the honor of moderating the panel. My job is simpler. I just get to ask questions. And so I'll just decide to stand here and participate in the panel to make a little bit less cozy over there in those chairs. So joining us on the panel is Swaroop Ganguly. He's the professor, as I introduced him earlier, of EE department and also a professor in charge of IIT Research Park. Sandeep Oswal, who's a senior fellow at Texas Instruments. Som Pal, who is a partner at Bharat Innovation Fund. Charan Gurmurthy, who heads the Tata Semiconductor Assembly and Test Unit. And Sudeep Shivali, who is the Regional Director of Sales and Marketing in Synopsys India. Anand Ramamurthy, who is the Managing Director of Micron India. Suraj Rangarajan, who is the Chief Technology Officer of Applied Materials in India. And Sumit Verma, who is a last-minute change, flew in the early hours of this morning from Bangalore to substitute another Intel person. Sumit is Director of Strategy at Intel India. So I would like all of us to welcome them before I throw it open to. So the question on the table is, how does an industry academia consortium that Udayan talked about earlier, how does it enable a more effective path to ecosystem development and support the ISM vision? By ISM, I mean India Semiconductor Mission. So with that question in mind, each person on the panel is going to share their thought in a few minutes from their perspective and their company's perspective. So I invite Suraj to start with his opening remarks.
If I can get the mic to work. It's on. Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning. Thanks, Sunit, and thanks to the chief guests and speakers and Udayan. Okay. Yeah, you need to get this out of the way in any event, right? The mic working. Okay, good morning. Thanks, Sunit. Thanks to the chief guest. And
This is what is referred to as user error.
user error? Okay, fine, I'll take that. Let's hope that gets it out of the way for the rest of the people. Okay, I would like to build on what has been said so far. I think Udayan gave a very good summary of the birth of SemiX, and I think he picked a very cute baby there in that picture representing SemiX also. So I think all of you guys know Applied Materials. It's the world's leader in semiconductor and display equipment, and also one of the big proponents for semiconductor manufacturing ecosystem in India. There was a reference to the CEN that was set up in 2006. So Applied Materials was one of the key partners in that. We donated equipment to IIT Bombay, which was used to set up the CEN and also part of the INUP. We also worked with IIT Bombay later when the semiconductor ecosystem shifted slightly to PV. So we were part of the NCPRE. We also set up Sunfab turnkey manufacturing in India. A lot of lessons, learnings on what can be done in semiconductor manufacturing are there from that time. So if anyone wants to know, we actually built those big PV, thin film solar. Here we did PECVD all in 2009 timeframe. So it's possible. Then from engagement with IIT, we also set up a clean lab, a chemistry lab for energy and nanoelectronics, and that we also transferred to IIT Bombay. We have collaborated with IIT Bombay, all the different departments, with a lot of professors, students, and we have a very active internship program. There are people here from IIT Bombay who are part of Applied Materials employees, both here and in our global unit. So this has been a very good and successful partnership for both sides in terms of what can be done between industry and academia, looking towards a semiconductor ecosystem. Udayan also talked about the semiconductor training. So this we did back in 2012 when one of the early incarnations of we will do semiconductor fab in India. We did set up a semi-skills training program with IIT. The first edition was run in 2012. We ran 2 or 3 editions, and we restarted it now, training both for our employees as well as the ecosystem. And this is something that we believe very strongly is a need for effective ecosystem in India. Now coming to what the company is doing and what I believe, right? So the semiconductors as an area right now is about $600 billion. We believe that it will grow to $1 trillion by 2030, driven by lots of different factors, AI, consumer needs, increase in silicon content, to name a few drivers. So 2 or 3 things that we are doing in that regard. While the semiconductor manufacturing is happening, one aspect that Shri Krishnan talked about was the parts and components. How can we build that ecosystem? So in the recent Semicon that was held in Gandhinagar, we brought 40 of our global suppliers to the semiconductor ecosystem, and we are trying to get them to manufacture and have a presence here. So as Shri Krishnan said, getting those parts and components manufactured here, pumps and things like that, which are critical to the semiconductor industry, is a good starting point to get the rest of the ecosystem going. So that is something that we are committed to doing. So Udayan also showed the 400 million investment in an engineering center in Bangalore. So this will be sort of the focal point where our engineers are there. We bring all our tools, the latest tools. We work with the suppliers. We have our supplier partners also in the room. They come there, and academia. So together we will partner and build this ecosystem while the manufacturing ecosystem happens. So this will be in parallel, and this will sort of drive semiconductor ecosystem in India. The other part that we are very committed to is the skilling and training. So this is something where we do plan to work in conjunction with IIT Bombay and try to build on the success of the training programs that we've done, so that both we benefit and people can be trained and make semiconductor a desirable place for people and students to look at, right? A place that can give them a career and a future. So while doing all this, we've also set up an ecosystem here. We have about 60 of our employees, masters, PhD students. We've built labs here, and we engage with this ecosystem. So the thing that I believe industry can do is to build infrastructure and bring in industry relevant problems, so that's the right partnership that we can do with academia. And we hope that SemiX is the right forum to bridge this and make things happen.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Then I believe Sandeep, you're the next person.
Thanks, Sunit, and thanks to the event for giving us an opportunity to talk. I will start from a more personal note. I was wondering why I'm here, why we are at IIT Bombay, why we are talking semiconductors. And I saw the picture that Udayan showed of a child being mentored by a bunch of people, right? And the ecosystem is enabling it. And then I kind of connected to that picture. I'm a product of IIT Bombay, and I was mentored by Professor Vasi, Professor Rakesh Lal, Professor Chandurkar, and Professor Dinesh Sharma. And when I saw Professor Vasi register, I was actually hoping that he'll be here. Hope to see him sometime later today. And that's the nature of IIT Bombay. That's what the alumni and the infrastructure and the ecosystem that IIT Bombay has created foundational work in semiconductors since the 90s, or maybe even before that, before my time. And that's the reason I'm here. I'm really keen to connect back and join this initiative. And then I was looking for many other things, like what are similar, right? So the first thing in a lighter note struck me is that IITB is Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, and then I was looking at where I am, Texas Instruments, India, Bangalore, and stands reverse order, like TIIB. Yeah, then it said, yeah, it made sense. Yeah, it made sense. That's why I was at IIT, and then now I'm at TI. Then I started going further and started looking at what TI's vision is, right? TI's vision is to make semiconductors affordable and omnipresent. And then what will it enable? So the part that I was looking for again came to me like early morning, 6 a.m. when I was in the flight, right? What is it that semiconductor is going to enable TI to do, or what is it going to enable the community to do? And then I thought it's going to be like autonomous. It is going to enable basically autonomous, energy efficient, intelligent, intuitive, observant, and ubiquitous semiconductor systems, right? Then I was wondering what all these words stand for, and they just stand for vowels like A, E, I, O, U. And really, I really believe that that's what's going to happen, that all of this is going to come true, that semiconductors are going to be autonomous, they're going to enable intelligent systems, energy efficient systems, environment aware systems, and secure systems. And that is what I feel that India's semiconductor mission should be, right? Because we are a country, like the minister said, right? The secretary said that we are a very large country. Our needs are going to be really high in volume, but we need it to be really affordable. And that's the only way we will make it affordable. So that's the other thing that I connected to, that's what TA's vision is, that's what India's semiconductor mission should be, to really make electronics an enabler for our economy, for our future, for our technology needs, right? Then I started going deeper, and I was wondering what else is similar. And then I started thinking about TI. TI in India started 35 years ago. It was a pioneering effort for the first semiconductor company to build an offshore development center in India. And I feel SemiX, or India Semiconductor Research Center, will be another pioneering effort which will start a global or India level initiative for semiconductor research. So I found some similarity there, that 35 years back, whatever TI started is something similar that India is trying to do in terms of the growth and trajectory that we want to be. So in that trajectory, TI has continuously grown from being a very small, less than 10, 20 people company in India. It was a satellite dish. There is a famous picture where the dish came on a bullock cart because there was no other infrastructure to raise the dish. And we know where we are today. We are one of the most critical development center for TI. We have more than 3,000 engineers working in 50 product lines. We have very diverse set of research interests. We are working on biosensing signals, which are like in samples per second, 2 gigahertz for auto radar or for wireless infrastructure. We have devices which are built on deep submicron 60 nanometer technology, less than 1 volt supply. And then we have products that are built on high performance GaN, which is for 600 volt power conversion. So you name it, and TI will be in those end equipments. We are very focused on automotive, industrial. We are focused on wireless infrastructure, communication infrastructure, networking infrastructure. So there is a very diverse set of opportunities that awaits any collaboration that we want to do with an academic institute. And the participation that we've had from IIT so far is like Professor Sudarshan was saying earlier, right? Most of the times we have got benefited from the best talent that is available. We have taken like some of the smartest engineers that IITs have produced, and they have come to TI and built world-class products, and they have built world-class technology. And that is where we are wanting to go a little bit further and engage in the research portion, engage with the faculty in any domain. Like the way TI works now is that there are very independent units. Even the units in Bangalore have charter to do end-to-end systems. Like we can work with the customer, do product definition, we can do design, architecture, layout, testing, characterization, signal processing, we can do EDA tools, we can do methodology, we can do process technology, memory. In fact, in that context, TI is one of the few semiconductor companies which owns almost entirely the entire semiconductor signal chain, right? Semiconductor value chain, from manufacturing to packaging to design and to all other aspects. So we are very open to work with IIT in a very broad way, and we are also very keen to work on very specialized problems, because the semiconductor industry is, of course, working in 2 different directions. One is, of course, the deep submicron process, which is going scaling, and that is where all the AI and all of that is helping. But there's another vector, which is, like all of us know, it's like more than more. There are a lot of sensing technologies, power technologies, integration of 3D semiconductors, which are specialized techniques which don't need the most advanced fabrication facilities. So there is a lot of opportunity for doing collaborative research in these diverse domains. And TI will actively engage with the right mindset. Like I remember the passion that all the 4 professors that I worked with as a student, they had the desire to make a difference. And wherever we find good faculty, curious students, passionate engineering talent, right, we will engage and go to the next level. That's our hope. That's why we are all here, and thanks a lot for the opportunity, Sunit.
Thank you. And I think with that, we'll go to Anand. And I just request everyone to stay within a 4-minute kind of a...
Why was the trigger? Just kidding. Morning, everyone. Sunit, Udayan and team, thank you for putting together a very tightly managed and well-orchestrated event. So far, so lovely. Thank you so much. Glad to be here. Always good to be refreshing, coming to a place of learning, especially a place like IIT Bombay. Quick introduction of me and my company. I represent Micron. Micron is a global leader in memory and storage. In India, we were a late comer in many ways compared to our peers. We set up shop, shop being a positive word, not a negative connotation. We set up our operations in 2018, and I was the founding managing director for Micron. And in around less than 5 years, we've grown significantly. We proudly call it one of the fastest ramps in Indian semiconductor history. Around 4,000 plus people in less than 5 years. And more importantly, and I know the secretary is here, we took the decision on the basis of the momentum we saw in the R&D engineering footprint to actually be the first semiconductor major, IDM major, to actually announce back-end manufacturing in India early this year. At this time, I expect a pause sometimes. I expect some kind of applause. I'm just kidding. So we did that. Yeah, okay. This was almost forced, but you have to do it sometimes. So the good part, the reason I mentioned both is one success leads to another, because no company, to the best of my understanding, bets on a market or a country just because it loves the market or a country, or the market country has appeal. To be very honest, talent is global. We have talent everywhere. Incentives also sometimes can be seen all over the world. But the intent, and more importantly, the success the company had, he talked about the success of TI. TI is in many ways a pioneer in design, and we've all taken our playbooks out of TI's playbook. So I think I like the concept of pilot that Udayan talked about, because you got to show some success. When we showed success in R&D, we went back to our leadership team and said, hey, manufacturing could be done out of India. And there are other factors in play, very supportive government, great incentives, and growing availability of talent pool, geopolitics, all of that put together led to a decision. But I think if I look at some of the most important learnings that we've had in the last couple of years working out of India, the first one is the concept of coalition and collaboration is so fundamental to our success. The example I would like to give you very quickly is we do both DRAM and NAND designs at Micron, and India doesn't really have any dedicated DRAM design talent pool. If you want to go and design a DRAM die, there is no readily available talent pool out there. There may be pockets of it here and there. And obviously we decided that we have to go and pick people from colleges. So the first DRAM design that was done out of India was led by 28 new college grads, including some from IIT Bombay, and a couple of lateral talent. We create the first piece of silicon that is zero reticle revision, first silicon pass. It meets the high yield standards we have in the semiconductor industry. And again, as success leads to more success, it's a great example of how an industry can bet on college and talent that is readily available in India, go and design something that is unique, difficult, never been done before. So these are examples that give us the idea of how we can go and get something done which has not been done before, and leveraging and betting on talent, both student talent and faculty talent that we have so much in the country. The second quick comment I want to make in the context of the event today, I want to be honest and practical. If you look at, I look at this as a maturity curve. You look at the maturity of our government policies, incentives, look at the maturity of the industries, peers like us leading that effort, the startup ecosystem, then we look at academia, right? These are the four moving parts in some ways. Truth be told, we're all in different phases of maturity, but none of them has reached peak maturity in my opinion, right? Peak maturity is when one part of this four system has enough credibility to go and get something done on its own without needing the power of the other. We're not there yet, right? If you look at our startup ecosystem, well, then you had great examples, but still I know for a fact that the semiconductor startup ecosystem is still in very early stages because it's a fundamentally difficult, very high barrier to entry kind of system. Faculty research is getting better and better. I looked at some of the data that you showed, but we also know we are nowhere close to an AstraZeneca-Oxford kind of collaboration where the industry can go to a college and say, I can build the vaccine because I know that you guys can deliver. We're not there yet, right? I talked about Micron doing amazing things in the country, but I also will accept that we are not to a point where we define the architecture, the technology node, and the entire design of every subsystem in the country yet. And the government obviously has incentives, policies, it's great intent, high quality bureaucrats, but again, it's entering the party a little late in the game, right? The success metrics are being defined as we speak. So when you have these kind of what I call maturity dissonance, the only way to succeed is to collaborate. It's almost a forced equation, and I believe that's where we'll gain our best traction. So I'm excited at the possibilities of what we can do with IIT Bombay in particular, because the reputation it carries, the body of work, increasing lab infra are all great markers. As Micron, we have close to 400,000 square feet of lab space that we have in Hyderabad and Bangalore design centers. We've gone ahead and told the government and the local governments that willing to support startups to leverage our labs if required, so that they can reduce their initial upfront cost of building a product or designing a product. So committed to the cause of building the semiconductor ecosystem in the country. We are happy with the progress we've made so far, and I look forward to more engaging discussions today and in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Anand. Okay, Charan. I think Charan's next.
Good morning. So after MeitY, TI, and Micron, I'm really wondering why I'm here. So Charan Gurumurthy, I head Tata Semiconductor Assembly and Test. I joined Tata about 9 months ago, returned to India after close to 30 years in the United States. So I worked for Intel for 23 years in some front end, some back end, and then I worked for IBM Research, TJ Watson Research Center in Yorktown Heights, New York, and before that I was PhD from Cornell. And Udayan and I did PhD from Cornell. He is now a great faculty. I wonder what happened to me. So, so and pleasure to be here. And so Tata Semiconductor Assembly and Test is a part of Tata Electronics. We are wholly owned subsidiary. And in Tata Electronics, we have multiple verticals and a horizontal. In the vertical, we are looking at enclosures and EMS, electronics manufacturing system, as a vertical. We are looking at Tata Semiconductor Assembly and Test as a vertical. That also includes system integration, building the system, actually manufacturing the system and subsystems. And eventually, we are also looking at the opportunity for a foundry. And these are the verticals, and with design services being the horizontal. And in specifically talking about Tata Semiconductor Assembly and Test, we are happy to say our very first commercial factory is operational beginning this month. And so it is a, thank you. So I didn't have to prompt, thank you very much. And so it's a big milestone for us, so that keeps us very busy. And it's in the southern part of the country, and it starts with traditional manufacturing, as well as then we will scale to more advanced manufacturing. So the way I look at it, many things that have been said, fantastic points. And in addition to that, I feel that we need to have a very strong roadmap. And roadmap by itself really doesn't matter. Roadmaps do change, but the concept of getting together and thinking about the future is extremely important. Because as an academic institution, if you ask me what academic institution should be working on, I'll give you a long laundry list of problems that I have today. Those are yesterday's problems. So we want the academia to be forward-looking. So having a roadmap and thinking what needs to be done for the future. And also in terms of foundationally, you don't need to worry about products. We are there to worry about products and commercialization and all those things. If academia can deliver foundational platforms and on which we could build a differentiation and we could build products, that will be super helpful. And so those are the type of discussions I want to have today. And also, when it comes to training and talent development, there is a typical focus talking about engineering training and so on. What I really worry as a manufacturing facility is technicians and operators. You don't want somebody doing an ITI or working in the road suddenly handling equipment, semiconductor equipment, right? So we need them to understand what is EST and even just the governing procedure. I was quite shocked that we have a clean room in which one of our employees was having coffee. And so, of course, it is before the clean room got certified and everything. But nevertheless, right, that shows that operators and technicians needs to be trained so that they understand. It's not their fault. It's our responsibility to train them properly. So at multiple levels, the training has to happen. And also, as we need to progress, the way I look at it is we cannot take the same path that China and other countries in the world took in manufacturing. We have to be able to leapfrog, think different, right? And towards which I look forward to a strong participation with academia, particularly IIT Bombay, where I have a lot of good friends, and then collaborating on talking about future and some things that would change and be very compelling and very differentiated. Not just try to do what has been done a bit faster and so on. It's okay to catch up, but I look forward to opportunity to leapfrog and develop leadership. So with that, I will give it to the next person. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sharon. I think the next person on my list is Sumit.
Thank you, Charan. Sunit, Rikhi, Udayan, thank you for having me here. Shri, Krishnan, Professor Sudarshan, and my fellow panelists on the dais. You know, one of the great thing about my job is, you know, I come to academia, I learn from students, I learn from professors, and that enriches the life greatly. And it's kind of what it also allows me is to do more in my regular job. I'm a proud employee of Intel, and Intel for the last 50 years has been making technology advancements in the world that changes or has transformed the way people live and work. You know, When I look around the industry as well, one of the pleasing thing is several of the co-workers, co-fellow travelers have spent some time in a company like Intel. Even in this room, I find some people who are either working in Intel or have spent time at Intel and on the DICE as well, in the government as well. So that's really a nice feeling. Talking about Intel India, for last 25 years, Intel in India has been focused on engineering excellence, research and innovation in India. It's now strengthened and built to be the most and the biggest design center outside US for Intel. And like for many other companies, right, which has also done the same and become the largest design center for that companies in India office, Intel in India has also excelled in that way. We now have more than 14,000 employees. Most of them are R&D engineers. Intel has spent over $9 billion in investment over these years, which shows the commitment as well as the level of support that we get from the nation. It's a microcosm of Intel Corporation. Any product, architecture, SoC, graphics, IP that Intel works on at a global level, part of that work is done in India. So from that perspective, Intel in India is pretty much part and parcel of the semiconductor ecosystem and India tech ecosystem. From a university collaboration perspective, Intel at a corporate level has been collaborating for decades. And in India, we have been doing it for at least last 20 years. For last 13, 14 years, I've been involved in some form or the way. These engagements go from skill development to research, checks all the boxes that SemiX intends to do through the program. A couple of years ago, what we tried to do is reinvent the university program in India and say that how can we be more focused and demonstrate higher impact in the country. So we revamped the whole university engagement to a program called LEAD, Leadership and Excellence in Academic Development, which has kind of five main functions. The first one is high impact research. How do we do collaborative research with academia? It's so difficult to move, for MNC, difficult to move research dollars from Silicon Valley outside US. So getting it in India has its challenges, and we made a mark by having our own research fund in India, in addition to the fund that Intel Corporate has. And we have done several research collaborations in at least last 5 years across various levels. Each year is different. In one of this year, we had close to 100 publications and 6 to 8 patents done in 1 year, all through Indian industry, Indian academic collaboration, which was tremendous. We also are working with government to come out with unique ways to do industry collaboration, because a lot of the times, since it's an evolving process, we want to share our inputs on how the new gen industry, government, academia, research collaborations will work. Very recently, we collaborated with DST, and Intel led it, but it was an industry effort to come up with a unique research collaboration opportunity called FIRE, Fund for Industrial Research Engagement, that allows upfront commitment from government and industry to do research in industry-relevant problems in either a single or a industry consortium model. So high impact research is one key areas. Then we look into knowledge innovation exchange with universities. We look into collaborative classrooms from course development as well as teaching and co-teaching in classrooms. Talent for India Tech is extremely important, because for us, it's not just talent for Intel, but for talent for India Tech ecosystem. So we have programs from fellowships to even government alliances that we do. With Ministry of IT, SMDP, for about 3 years, we ran an internship program that provides students opportunity to do industry internship. And these are the students who are good students from tier 2 kind of colleges, because India's academic ecosystem is kind of skewed, right? Top 50 colleges are kind of at a one league, but the rest of the middle tier is kind of, there's a big difference in those. So how do we take care of the skill needs of the nation? The skills need not come from only the top 100 colleges. So a big role has to be played by the 1,000-odd colleges, if not all 5,000, to provide that skills. So those are the focus areas that we do from a lead program perspective. But having said that, key trends that we have seen is that the gross expenditure in R&D, while it is increasing, there has to be more focus in further investment in research and expenditures in India, sitting at about 0.7% with a goal of reaching 1.25 or 1.5% is extremely important. Number of researchers that we have in India per million are also extremely low from a global population perspective. I think clocking only about 160 researchers per million as compared to maybe 8,000 that South Korea has and several other thousands at most of the countries. So that would mean more dollar investment, rupee investment has to go. Industry, and all of that will not come from government, we know that. Industry has to find a way to do that. And with India's semiconductor mission and with SemiX, right? The way I see is that the technology blocks that India has been doing in last few years, right? Be it UPI, Aadhaar, etc. What it has done is it has created a irreversible, non-linear impact. So for a lot of years, nothing happens, things work in a status quo, and then some technology development like Aadhaar happens, and boom, all of a sudden you have leapfrogged in a technology race against several other countries. Same happened with UPI. The same situation for us now in semiconductor space, where we are technically a lot behind from a global level. There is intent, we have done that in the past. Can we create some systems to have those technology blocks that will create those irreversible, non-linear, exponential change, which will help India leapfrog in next few years? So looking forward to the discussion, and thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have Sudeep go next.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, first of all, thank you for giving this opportunity, Professor Udayan and Swaroop. It's an honor to be among the brilliant minds here and also eminent leaders. I was asking Udayan, why a business guy in the panel, right? This shows the end-to-end what you are thinking from the SemiX perspective. My name is Sudeep. I take care of the go-to-market business plans for Synopsys. Synopsys is a global leader for EDA, IP, and manufacturing solutions. We have grown in India as our customer grew, right, in last 28 years, if you see. So pretty much all functions of design automation, IP development, manufacturing is done out of India. So we are about 5,000 plus people in India today. Each year we take about 200 people under internship, right? And we have, as of now, if you go to our website, there are 250 positions open for Synopsys India only at a various experience level, right? So this is brief about Synopsys India. Adding on to what Mr. Suraj was talking about, the market growing from $600 billion to $1 trillion, right? So this has been talked in many forums. If you look back, it took like 2.5 to 3 decades to grow it to 600 billion market. But you're adding up another $400 billion in next 7 years. That is really exponential, right? So when we looked at the economics part of it as a strategy meeting inside, we looked at if we don't do anything from the workforce perspective, right? From the supply side, we have close to 6 to 7%. I'll talk about the demand side first. Each year to meet that 400 billion mark, the growth, each year we need 10% additional workforce into the system. But on the supply side, we are looking at somewhere around 7 to 8%. So it's a 2% gap each year. At the fast forward at a 2030, if we don't do anything, we are looking at somewhere around 15 to 20% gap in the shortage. So this was a mission, it became like a goal inside Synopsys in order to say, hey, how can we contribute to the industry growth? It's not just essential for Synopsys growth, but also the industry growth, right? So then we started putting up an initiative called SARA. It's called Synopsys Academic and Research Alliance Program. So we started looking at various geographies across the world. We did a lot of work with Purdue University in US. And IITB, when Professor Udayan and Swaroop came in, they stood out among our metrics in terms of, hey, here is the platform which Professor Udayan and entire the IIT Bombay is trying to create. Is this the way we can create a practical knowledge center, right? So there are a lot of training part which has been discussed. Sometimes Synopsys is seen as, hey, just a tool company, you need to learn the tool. But we are pretty much focused on many verticals serving our customers. It could be HPC, it could be automotive, it could be any AI-based enablement chipset. There's a very specific ask our customers ask us, right? What are you doing in terms of HPC enablement or automotive growth in per se? There's a digital twin coming up. One has to understand this virtualizing models and getting into the prototyping, emulations, etc. Right? So it's a complete system validation at the end of the day. So when we look at that and we look at the gaps in the current system, we thought SemiX is what the ethos in which they are building. This is the best platform to get the practical application and bridge the people, learn here and bridge it to the industry. And the second part to this is how do we scale this, right? The scaling part we were looking at, we need to equip faculties and the trainers to create the future workforce in terms of what is required. From the opportunity standpoint, it's not just designs. We are looking at mechanical, the thermals, there is a chemical part which we are talking about, right? There's a gamut of, a domain knowledge which comes in. So we need to comprehensively look at it. So through SARA program in India, we are trying to address this, and we are looking forward to partner with academic institutions, as well as SemiX being the, stood out in our metrics. We are hoping and we would like to continue this collaboration. This is all I can say. Thanks.
Thank you. Som.
Hi, I'm Shom Pal Chaudhary. I'm a partner and co-founder of BIF Ventures, Bharat Innovation Fund. We are one of the early stage, deep tech only focused VC funds in India. So what we do is we invest in deep tech, core tech, IP-driven technology companies from India who are kind of doing globally, right? Business globally. Happy to say we have around 15 plus startups now, just core focused on cybersecurity, 5G networks, even biotech companies. Just recently, we funded a company, ex-professor of IIT Mumbai, Professor Manoj Gopal Krishnan from Electrical Department. His company is a company called Algorithmic Biologics, primarily focused on in the omics space, in the molecular diagnosis space, using algorithms, using molecular computing. It's bringing in a lot of efficiencies in that space, right? So one question obviously comes, in fact, as soon as I entered this room, I was asked by Anand, somebody else as well, hey, so are you investing in semiconductor, right? The bit of a history, I come from a semiconductor background. Prior to BIF, I was managing director of analog devices, spent a long history with Cadence Design Systems in Silicon Valley. And then I moved kind of across the value chain from EDA to semiconductor to actually networking, and I had my own startup called American Grid in the IoT M2M space. So I had a luxury of kind of going through the entire value chain of the semiconductor. And now, getting in from an investor standpoint, my goal essentially is to help these fledgling semiconductor kind of ecosystem kind of grow. I'm sitting also on the DLI panel of MeitY, and we get to see a lot of startups haven't pulled the trigger as yet on the semiconductor ecosystem, on the semiconductor startups. Good number, probably 3-4 dozen startups have evaluated, and it's coming up extremely well. obviously, there are a lot of challenges, right? As everybody in the panel put up, it's still a very early ecosystem. Now, the major challenge that I see essentially is last 20, 30 years, we have been extremely well trained. Given a product, given a spec, we can design it pretty darn good, right? But the challenge in the semiconductor world, this is the biggest piece, is we have to define a bit of the future. What's coming 2-3 years down the road, right? What will fly? So this is where I think the collective consortium, the collective brain power of the industry, the academia kind of comes in, right? And that's where, to get to that ISM, the Indian Semiconductor Mission, SemiX is a very strong pole, beachhead, needs to get it done. In terms of bringing in the industry, with the right knowledge, what is the future, what kind of systems are kind of getting done, right? So you cannot design a chip in isolation. It has to be a part of a system, right? And in terms of the requirements needs to come from what kind of systems are getting designed in the foreseeable future, right? In terms, we also talked about, a lot of times we heard about leapfrog, right? Can we look at, see, as we are coming in late, it doesn't make sense to kind of do incremental improvement. It has to be a step jump in anything that we do. We have done it in the mobile industry to a certain extent. We have now done it with, we talked about the Aadhaar, right? Can we create a India Stack moment? Can we create an Aadhaar moment with the semiconductor ecosystem as well, right? For that, I think the Indian Semiconductor Mission has been coined extremely well. Think about it, it's a mission. We all need to come together, right? We have to remove all of our ego, we have to remove all of our differences and come together for the single mission, right? Looking at all the geopolitical pieces, at the end of the day, 10 years from now, if the technology tap gets shut off, we are all in trouble. Okay, I'll leave it out here. Looking forward to engage with you guys more.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Well, before I pass it on to Swaroop, I just want to comment that I learned something new. From spec interpreters, we need to be spec writers. And that's a good way to catch one of the key messages that you sent. So finally, Swaroop, we are up to you now, and you get to say whatever is on your mind.
Thank you, Sunit, for your energy and your guidance. Thanks to Mr. Krishnan, Professor Sudarshan, for being encouraging. It gives us a right to come bug you with specific facilitations in the coming future, and we'll do that. But let me now talk about what Sunit has tasked us to do. Sunit, my answer is in two parts. There is an engineering answer, which is nuts and bolts, and there is, I think, a humanities angle. I'll talk about the engineering part, and then if you give me some time later, then we'll come back to the other. In terms of how industry academia engagement is to be facilitated, is to be driven, right? I want to sort of start out by sharing that I have been in the semiconductor area since my PhD days at IIT Bombay, very involved with our semiconductor program. Over the last few years, I have been very involved with also IIT Bombay's research park. And what I want to do here is to expand the scope a little bit of what IIT Bombay can do for industry beyond SemiX and complementing SemiX to round out the picture, okay? Dr. Suraj Rangarajan has talked to you. Applied Materials happens to be the largest member company of the research park, okay? But maybe I'll take a step back and tell you what the research park is for those of you who are hearing it for the first time. It is meant to be IIT Bombay's single window for industry. Applied Materials engaged with IIT Bombay since 2005, and since 2016 or 17 has been a member of the research park. They have space in the research park. They're a residential member of the research park. What that allows them to do is go beyond semiconductors into complementary areas. They work with chemists, in chemistry and material science. They are working with folks in optimization and analytics in some other department. They're working across 6, 7 departments, tens of faculty members, right? It is towards a semiconductor goal, drawing in a lot of other expertise. Okay? And then the next example I want to take is that of a virtual or associate member of the research park, which is not resident on campus, as the name suggests. Shout out to Keynes. I see the Keynes Semiconductor CEO, so Raghu. They are one of the newest members of the research park, virtual members. You would have seen in the news that they are also one of the first few now to set up, break ground on a packaging manufacturing facility in Telangana. And it is curious how our engagement started. It started with Keynes looking for collaboration with a company which could be its customer and which is with us, with the research park. And we said, yes, of course, welcome to our ecosystem, work with other companies. And do you know there is SemiX? And they have become a very core partner of SemiX now. It is with them that we have done India's first packaging course. So that is the value that the research park seeks to bring with SemiX and actually with other centers of excellence that we have. Brochures for the research park are in all the registration folders, so look into it and contact, and we'll be happy to talk some more. I want to, besides the research park, I wanted to particularly shed light on one more very important institute initiative. Everyone here has talked about or touched upon training, right? Where do we go if we do not have the talent? The big growth in semiconductors, talent would be the bottleneck unless we solve that problem. And IIT Bombay has a signature initiative. We have created a new office called Educational Outreach with a dean to take IIT Bombay digital and our training content to not just the whole of India, but the whole of the world. And the Dean of Educational Outreach will be in the semiconductor workforce plenary session tomorrow. The EU office is working with SemiX to come out with a lot of content that hopefully will change the face of semiconductor training in India. Okay, I think I'm at 5 minutes. I'll stop here, and then there's a humanity angle which can come in later. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so, I sent a question to them, and it's taken about an hour to come back to me. So, as a result, I'm going to throw away all my questions, and I'm going to ask packaged questions, and I want the panelists to be in rapid fire mode and specifically go for what I'm requesting them to answer in all the future questions. So the one thing that I've noticed is, I look at this three-legged stool, the research, academia, industry, and the government. And that's the stool. It provides stability with those three legs. And my question is, what are some of the specific things that this consortium can do that will enhance our ability to add value to the mission? So a couple of examples come to mind that I've already heard, okay? Udayan talked about his fascination with this concept of pilots. Use the consortium to pilot stuff and then let it flourish outside. Charan mentions, hey, the three-legged stool should have a combined roadmap. It doesn't have to be stable. It can be a synchronization mechanism for the industry, for the consortium to align on. And of course, Swaroop has mentioned some very specific things that go beyond SemiX and support the three-legged stool. So now, if you think about SemiX as the consortium, and you take these examples, I'd like the panel, and I'm going to throw it randomly. I'm not going to be the assignee of next sequence anymore. Whoever wants to come in, just fight it out. But, you know, can you add such specifics to how to make this consortium more effective?
Okay. No, Sunit, I think it's a $1 million question, actually $1 billion question, depending on where you are. But one thing, again, taking a leaf from our design playbook, my team tells me I overuse this word of co-location, right? I think pilot is a proxy in my mind for being intimately familiar with some of the problems we are solving at the India development centers, right? Of course, IIT Bombay, given its global appeal and repute, will work on foundational problems and foundational issues. But an element of familiarity with some of the core design problems being designated to the design center. I'll give you an example. All the success we've had with IIT Bombay have been because we have Dr. Partha here. We are trying to model the behavior of the next generation materials for our next generation technology nodes. And that material modeling is an area that India is going to be driving a lot of. And that's where the talent comes in, and one thing leads to another, and it becomes a center of excellence in a matter of time. I think the intent is for us to work well together, but having the level of detail to understand what are we working on, what is our own little roadmap for our development centers, and then mixing and matching it with the talent that you may have on the faculty, postdoc, PhD side. I think that process can be fine-tuned even more, right? This is not coming at the cost of what you still have to do as a Institute of National Eminence or Global Eminence, but just that portfolio mapping. Like I'll give you just one more example for the heck of it. We're thinking of this new CXL interface as the next new high bandwidth interface, or high bandwidth memory, for example. These are areas that Micron in public domain will be very actively working in, and India will play a very important role. If I find the right kind of design, engagement, interaction, and energy on the other side of academia, I think one thing leads to another, and then you don't have to wait for a strategic bet. It'll be one success leading to another, and things taking a size of its own. So more intimate interactions on areas of such collaboration.
Sounds good. Sudeep B.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so
Come right after that.
Sure.
Sunit, you mentioned about the three-legged, we call it as triple helix inside Synopsys. So we think this triple helix hybrid organizations, like with the industry, government, academic research coming together, will be the future bed of innovation platforms, right? So if I look at what SemiX is trying to create and the aspirations, right? I somewhere see that this can be a good IDM light applied research organization kind of a thing, right? So when I say IDM light, I pretty much yesterday walked through the labs, and it's quite interesting to see pretty much from device modeling to materials to a small fabrication, everything can be done here, right? So there is and you're talking about packaging, you're talking about testing, design. If everything comes underneath, and there are various startups also whom I interacted, this can be really an IDM light organization with applied research and enabling the startups, right? I was talking to Soil Sense guys, right? So it was quite interesting where it's not about the money, it's not about the technology solving, it's about government certification. So this is where something like a think tank, if we have, which can help these kind of startups enable their go-to-market plans, that will be an excellent. That's all I can say. Thanks.
Go ahead, Surit.
Yeah, thanks. So I look at this from a much higher level. There are 3 or 4 inflections that are happening today which make semiconductor relevant from an India perspective. One is there is a supply chain inflection. People are looking at different places other than China for their supply chain. Can India be that place where you can manufacture for the global industry? It's not trivial. It requires technology. It requires partnership, expertise. The second is AI, right? AI is going to be the engine that doubles this. India will bring a different perspective of AI. The cost, the application, everything is going to be different. How will startups drive that? The third is the human capital, right? Again, industry is going to double. Can India be the place where the global industry sources? And that requires a different kind of thinking. The fourth, which we have not yet talked about, hopefully we talk about tomorrow, is sustainability. I have 10 of these phones in my cupboard somewhere, which I have not thrown out. Assuming everyone throws out their old phones, old TVs, old laptops, and all stuff, where does that go, right? First. Second is, all these things that we are talking about from semiconductor is very, very, very energy intensive. It requires power, it requires water, and it puts out a lot of CO2 footprint. So to me, these are heavy issues. From a pilot perspective, can SemiX pilot one of these in conjunction with the government? That would be a great thing. I think all the other stuff can be done. Can you pilot one of these and make a difference?
Sharon?
So SemiX, one of the key objectives is to stimulate the startup environment. If you look at rest of the world, Taiwan and other ecosystem, they have fab and they have packaging and everything. But nevertheless, what really drives them is they have a very strong product companies, right? There is Real Tech and there is MeitY, and in the US there is Qualcomm and everything. While in India, certainly we have a very strong talent to do the design. The level of product company actually who do the product design is actually a little weaker compared to the rest of the ecosystem. So in order to stimulate the ecosystem, if we can have the startup ecosystem to be built up on certain focused areas, that will really change the game. Because if you have product here and there, not only we are consumers, if the demand rises right here, then I think everything will go on a steroidal growth. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add to that point, right? It's a very, very important point. And I think either ISRC, ISM, or SemiX can play this role, is to connect the Indian market or Indian need to the semiconductor development. So all the global companies or the local companies or the startups, right, have to find a unique solution for India. If some platform like this can enable connecting, let's say, a unique solution. For example, if you need an MRI system to work outside a AC room, right? How will you do it? So any of these problems, right? If we can identify unique problems, interdisciplinary, multi-dimensional problems, and say that a task force has to work on that, independent of whether we solve the problem, we will solve the subsystem problems. Once we solve the subsystem problems, there is enough need for semiconductors to go into those subsystems. So I think that is what we need to look for, like taking your idea about the product, right? If you focus on the end equipment, because all the big markets, right, China, US, Taiwan, everyone build the end equipment first, then understood the ecosystem, then build the system, like the product definition challenge, right? Unless you have the end customer close by, you're not going to define the problem enough or uniquely enough for you to solve a problem in a different way. So I think that is an opportunity because all the people are here, all the problems are here. If you can identify that problem, right, and give an example, take a pilot again, like for an ultrasound machine, take a wireless base station. We have not built a base station of our own for 30 years, right? Why can't we build one ourselves?
Thank you. Oh yes, you have been saving your human capital thoughts.
Yeah, yes, that too. But before that, jumping off from where Sudeep was about the triple helix, just to sort of clarify to everyone that that's the idea that government, academia, and industry have to work closely together to build a knowledge ecosystem. Right? That is what we are here for. I had a couple of good things to say about the government, and I'll say those even though the secretary had to take off. The tremendous foresight that the government had in creating the facilities that have enabled SemiX to take off from where it is taking off as a launching pad. The research park which I was talking about, all of those are government initiatives. the issue that I see having driven some of these large programs academic programs with the government is a trust deficit, and this is where the humanities angle comes in. In my mind, anything that is robust and of large value has to be based on trust. The core of scientific knowledge is just logic and reason, but the way that knowledge is generated, shared or not, is driven by human emotions and frailties. So the trust deficit has to be addressed, and the way that the government, the only way that that gets addressed is by industry and academia coming together and going together to the government. That has a whole different, that changes the dialogue with the government. That is what we have been trying to do from IIT Bombay, and that is what this consortium building has to do. It has worked in other countries. The US government, for instance, has liberally supported semiconductor programs with SRC, the industry body setting the direction. After that, NSF comes in. That is what our government has pretty much told us they want to see. So we got to make it happen now. That's all I had, Sunit.
So if I may just add to that, actually, so it's the third leg, the government. What weight should it carry? You talked about the so my question is going to be another compound one, just in case it never comes back to me. You talked about the trust deficit. One of the questions is, like, in this consortium model that we are thinking about, your point, Swaroop, is that if the two combine their voices, the trust deficit goes down. The deficit goes down. But one part that I'd like to know is if there is any comment from the industry on that point. The other is, when we think about government as an enabler, the first thing that comes to mind is money. But it is my experience that, based on just this 1 year that I've spent here, that there, more than money, there are efficiencies in processes that require some serious attention. So given those 2 points, if there are people in the panel who can shed more light on those 2 points, that'll be good.
So, Sunit, I think what's happening, I mean, this is probably the most proactive government we have all seen, right? And across, this is not about, the semiconductor mission and so forth. If you look at what's happening in the DOT side, what's happening on the strategic electronics side, right? This is an incredible push for indigenization that's happening. And the government, this is for the first time, see, we used to roam kind of the corridors of Bharat Electronics and the government North Block, South Block, essentially to convince them to do something and so forth, even back when I was at Analog Devices. The roles, to a certain extent, have actually reversed. They are now chasing after us to get things done, right? I have seen kind of, at least on, I'm on a 5G board, I have seen on the equipment side, right, how the Department of Telecommunication has actually doled out the funds at record time within a month or so, right? And now they're chasing after to get these deployments and so forth done as well. I'm sitting on the Ministry of MeitY for the DLI scheme, right, the Design Linked Initiative. Yes, we are not kind of moving fast enough in terms of getting these evaluations done. That's the that has been the message back to us, right? So I think, the government is completely changed, right? They are doing whatever they can from a regulatory perspective, monetary perspective, and so forth. We have to now, the industry and the academia, we now have to get together. The basic problem, as we talked about, is, I think Sandeep talked about it as well. We don't have that many product companies out in India today, okay? That is, those guys define the products, and hence, to a certain extent, we understand the ecosystem, the system, and so forth. Then we start designing the right semiconductor products. So that's a challenge. But that being said, even on the consumer electronics side, companies like Boat is a public company now. Companies like IdeaForge, which came out of IIT Mumbai, is a public company now, right? And they are looking at a lot of vision-related aspects and so forth on their payloads. If you start looking at our startups in the deep tech sectors, even space tech, we got a bunch of companies that are starting up. So that ecosystem, while still kind of early, that's starting to mature, right? And if you look at, I think Sunit had asked me to just touch on the startup ecosystem. I'm going to use this opportunity to do that. If you look at the past 30 years of the tech ecosystem in India, right? We all back in late 80s, early 90s, we all know the story. We started off with the IT sector, BPO. That's what India got known for. We did not have venture capital back then. We did not have a concept of product IP back then. So this was all about bootstrapped IP, bootstrapped services, right? IT development. That was the wave number one. Wave number two actually started probably 10, 15 years back with Flipkarts and Olas of the world. The entire world saw, just like China, we were consuming more. So the entire consumption first, right, wave started. Indians gonna get richer, they will acquire smartphones, unorganized sector will get organized. So all of these happened in the startup ecosystem today, right? But at the same time, the stalwarts out here, all our companies, we created the second largest R&D site in India for most of the major MNCs. And I'm not just talking about semiconductor. It happened with GE, it happened with ABB, with Amazon, Microsoft, every large MNC, right? A lot of Silicon Valley startups have their R&D teams in Bangalore, in Pune, other places as well. So now, start putting all three together. Very strong government policies, right? The startup ecosystem, the amount of capital, right, that has come in to India, and Indian homegrown VCs as well, okay? And a lot of incubators, accelerators, the support system of SemiX and so forth. So this decade, we believe it's gonna be innovation first ecosystem, right? We had services first, we had consumption first, this time it has to be innovation first. And I think the SemiX, right, with the ISM mission kind of together, we have to play a very constructive role in that space.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, Charan, I'll come back to you. Go ahead.
And just to add, I think semiconductor is a big space. So if we kind of broadly divide it into 4 space, we say, okay, you have design, then you have kind of, you can say systems, then you'll have materials and manufacturing. That's one way to break it, but there are more ways to break it. But the essence remains the same, that you cannot have one model for every space. For example, in design, we have good skill sets. We have startups that are doing the fabless, going the fabless route. Material systems also, we have a significant talent pool. Industry and academia are collaborating, and they should continue to do that. But when you talk about materials, it's a niche. You need much more support there. Industry support more is required. Probably their focus of skills may take a backstage for a while, and same is good for manufacturing, right? So when you talk about manufacturing, how can we be creative? Do we focus on chiplets and packaged chiplets or whatever it may be? But the idea is that you have to get different approach for different segments, because as part of semiconductor ecosystem or supply chain, you have to divide and conquer. You will never have one recipe for all spaces. Second point is, from a consortium model perspective, we have seen some consortium models. A lot of the consortium models fail because of trust, communication, or clear common objectives. SRC is a good model. I've worked with SRC for a while. They typically do open source. It works well. But having said that, we need unique, innovative ways of consortium models that generate intellectual properties, because we need it. How does that intellectual property or licenses get shared with industry is a unique problem, and we have to identify it. There are programs in India that have done it, and we need to learn from them. Because the moment you start talking about action, these problems will come and start facing us, right? So proactively, we need to kind of say, hey, this is the premise of the situation. These are the broad objectives. This is how we'll manage intellectual property. Or because I'm sure all open source is not going to work the way the environment is right now. And it will be a win-win for India, I think. So those models needs to be generated.
Thank you. Who did I? Oh, Charan.
Thank you. So I just want to add to the comments on semiconductor industry works based on trust, and trust is not somebody trusting us, it's also trust in ourselves. People put multi-billion dollars of money on developing the technology, not knowing who the customer would be, and in anticipation that it will be so compelling that somebody would buy. So in that, the way I look at it is we should not be afraid of failure, because failure can indeed be a part of the success. So I want us to think about something very ambitious. Even if the end goal is not accomplished by the consortium, there will be so many derivative technologies that will be accomplished along the way. That will pay for the cost of the consortium, and not accomplishing the end goal may not be that significant at all. So I just want some bold leadership coming out of the consortium. Thank you.
Actually, I have more questions, but in the spirit of working together, can the volunteers see if there's a mic you can run around with? If there's somebody wants to ask the panel a question, this is not a bad time to do that. Anyone?
I know we stand between you and your lunch. So
you have a trust deficit?
No, there is no trust deficit. I'm not standing in front of lunch, I'm sitting in front of lunch. So my question is, one of the key areas that has been identified is developing skill sets. I understand we are churning out folks from all tier universities. The question is, what industry in this case is going to do to enable the creation of a human capital?
Go ahead, Suraj.
I didn't understand, so maybe you can explain what was...
No, my question is, what industry is going to do? We understand that academic institutions such as IIT Bombay and others, and including tier 2 universities, are enabling through education, training people.
Sure.
My question is, what is industry going to do to enhance that?
Okay, so 2 or 3 things I can think of. One is we will partner with the institutions to design the curriculum and make sure that it is industry relevant, right? So whatever courses that are designed with hands-on and the academic content is something that makes people more employable and makes people more industry ready. That's one component. The second is to put in some infrastructure so that there is some hands-on component. So those are the 2 things I think industry can do to make sure that the training, skilling that is done makes it a win-win, that the people benefit and also industry benefits from that. That's what I can think.
I also think that internship should be increased to a scale that is much bigger. If you look at the United States, where I'm more familiar, we want to get these students at their 2nd year, 3rd year familiar about our industry and influence them that we are a good place to work. Otherwise, they will obviously go there. They all have great options. So I think internship is another additional to what Suraj said. Thank you.
And just to add, I think I was reading, we are about 1 million jobs less in semiconductors by 2025 and 1.5 million by 2027. So clearly these jobs are not going to come from the top 100 institutes of the country. And to a question, how does the rest of the middle tier 2,000 institutes participate in India's economy and support the semiconductor ecosystem? So again, if we kind of divide it, you'll have 2 sets of skill sets. One is skill sets that we already have, which is kind of, let's say, in the space of designs and systems. There we have to kind of strengthen and scale. We should strengthen those skills in the other institutes, next level of tier institutions, with the help of mentor institutes like IITs itself. Second is the future skills that you have to develop. So develop and build kind of skills for future needs that will not only take care of India but global needs, which probably in the initial phase has to be done by the top 20 odd institutes alone, be it in material space or packaging space, which has to have not only an Indian focus but has to have a global outlook, because hey, look at where the fabs are being set up today around the world. It's not going to be in India. And they will require skills. So the best way is to kind of start creating skills for the world, and in the process kind of move those skills back to strength and scale, and then other tier of institutions can participate. Other unique thing that I think industry and academia are doing, internship is a great opportunity. IITs unfortunately have a summer restriction in number of months that students can come in, but find creative ways of spending more time in industry, getting more industry people going to universities, and vice versa, getting faculties to industries, faculty sabbatical programs, short-term, long-term. I know most of the good faculties would like to go and do sabbaticals abroad. But at the same time, there are, if you kind of package it in a way that there's a mission aligned, then working with Indian MNCs work really well. So most of the successful models I have seen is if faculty is sitting in our offices, right, the way the collaboration happens is tremendous. And sometimes we have our people sitting in universities. It works tremendously nice.
Just to add one comment, right? I think it's a very important question you ask, and the answers are very consistent. I feel just like the industry, government and academia trust question, right? I think the question about trust between industry and academia itself can be solved if we believe that students are the conduit between the industry and the faculty. And if we allow free flow of students, specifically to these long-term internship programs, right? That is where faculty will know what students want, what student skills are required. They will know what research is happening in the industry, and industry will know what the strengths of the faculty are. So unless we use the opportunity to have students go back and forth, and also the very important point about believing that the semiconductor career is going to be huge for the next 10 years, right? I feel we are that's the greatest opportunity for India. The number of creative engineers that we can have both in the AI and the software, but more so also in the semiconductor and the hardware sector, right? That opportunity is great, and if you have the internship programs with the multinational companies or with the startups, right, irrespective of where you go, the synergy and the connection between the faculty and industry can be established. I feel that is where the trust can be created.
Okay. All right.
Sunit,
Okay.
may I add
After
to
this question, I want it back because I have an idea. So go ahead.
Sunit, may I add something to this one before?
Yeah, please. I mean, now we passed him the mic, so he has to give you permission.
Okay, if I have with your leave, I'll quickly add something. So the question was about what industry can do. And I wanted to say what academia can do to help industry do this. So two things come to mind. We were talking about, closer interaction, students and faculty. So in fact, the research park does that. You are co-located on campus, and it's possible. And this faculty doing their sabbaticals or even during summer, to industry is something that we really want to incentivize, right? Because we agree that it's a very powerful idea. Yeah. And Applied Materials has a presence on campus, so they can do this very easily. But one of the things that the research park will do, even for its virtual members, is to have co-working space so that your interns, could be working here as interns without even going to your, Bangalore or Hyderabad location. The other major initiative, which allows, helps industry help us, is a major initiative at IIT Bombay and other IITs for alumni outreach. SemiX has been tremendously helped by alum, but now I'm talking about material help. Alumni are setting up, helping us set up large centers of excellence and so forth. All we need is for industry to step up and work with us there. I mean, alumni are partially taking up the role of the government. That's not great, but the secretary has left, so I can say it. The government support is tapering off. and the alumni are stepping up. But whether it's government or it's our alum, if they are investing in this, they want to see that, you know, we are working with industry.
Right.
So you just need to step up. Yeah, thank you.
Great points. All right.
Okay. Hello. Good afternoon to everyone. Sir, I am from ICA, India Electronics and Cellular Association. And ICA already published 2 vision reports with MeitY. And according to it, up to 2026, our total electronics production will be $300 billion. So my question is that how long we address this question that we are too much concerned. We have so many concerns. If we see our neighbors, which are very much inferiors, like Malaysia, like Vietnam. Sir, Vietnam established the wafer production in 1970s. Why we not able to even establish the wafer production? Vietnam, Samsung is investing heavily in the Vietnam. Now, these countries are moving towards the complete foundry. Earlier, they are known for the packaging and testing, but many companies are investing too much there. And recently, in last 2 to 3 years, geopolitical situation has been changed drastically. That's why America launched, US launched its Chip and Science Act.
I'm trying to find a question there.
Yeah.
Are you going to get to the question?
Okay. So, sir, in my opinion, India has lots of capability. We have very good market. We need to take the initiation because SCL founded in India earlier than TSMC. But it is our policy paradox that we cannot grow ourselves greater in the global market.
All right, thank you. I think it was not a question, it was a statement and we all absorb it. Now to a good idea before, there's so many. No, so my idea was, is Raghu still here? Right. So if you give him the mic, it might be, you will be our panelist over there. So specifically talking about what Swaroop mentioned, if you can give 2 minutes.
Sure.
Minutes. Okay.
So that's on the OSAT part of it or my previous life at Mentor Graphics?
Well, 3 minutes.
Okay. No. So just to take a leaf on what Professor Swaroop mentioned on the OSAT part of it. 6 months back when we started this journey of writing the DPR and looking at partners and stuff like that, that's when I reached out. We had 2-3 problem areas that we are trying to solve. One, the fund part of it. Second, the technology partner, and third is the trained manpower resources available at multiple levels. And that's when we reached out and we saw that SemiX was trying to put a program in a certification program on packaging, and that's where we started to interact. And as of last week, we did the first program for 35 students, went through the entire program of 4 or 5 days, and that primarily was a little unique because instead of teaching them all over the internet and doing all the theoretical classes, they physically went through the lab and looked at the systems and stuff like that. So that was a little unique, which is apparently the need of the hour. I know that MeitY is looking at putting a center of excellence for packaging, and Professor Rautamala is doing and stuff like that. So various such initiatives are going on. So from our side, so we are in a journey of getting the DPR approved, subsidy done, and then hopefully by first week of April, we'll have the first line set up for one of the kind of package to be manufactured in Telangana.
And hopefully your website too.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So do you want a quick one? Or?
No, I just wanted to plug, I think Swaroop talked about a lot of the interaction between Applied and IT. There is an exhibit upstairs, so during a break, please go up there. We can talk a lot more about all the different things. Due to the 4-minute constraint, I didn't talk about it a lot. There are many things up there.
Okay. I think, ma'am, there were 2 hands there. You and you. Okay, you get next. You go next. She goes first. Okay.
I have been working on driving this academia-industry collaborations for the past now 10 plus years. We have discussed trust. We have discussed, we have all agreed that academia-industry must come together, collaborate. But in this journey, what I have observed is that IP is the place, usually that's where many of these interactions, many of these collaborations that becomes the showstopper. So how do you think we can address this? Can there be any, so when we all agree, all these three entities, then how do we address this?
In my opinion, collaboration should focus on foundational IPs so that you're developing things that are based on which people can start differentiating themselves over and above the foundational IPs. If you're talking about specific product, then there is a question of who owns that product. Our collective ownership is also not very helpful. I think we need to focus more on foundational items, and then people can derive products out of it. That's my opinion.
Okay, I'd like you to be next, but there are so many hands going up. We will need to end, so you can be next. And I saw, sir, your hand, and can we make you the caboose? Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for a lovely panel. I had a quick question. Mr. Suraj mentioned at SemiCon India, you brought about 40 of your suppliers to India. Like us, I'm sure there are a lot of other suppliers that work in parallel industries to SemiCon. How can we work with industry and academia to enter the SemiCon industry and be a local supplier for you as you all come into India? Thank you.
Sure. So that was one piece, the bringing global suppliers. Bringing local suppliers and get them qualified to the semiconductor industry is also something that we are working on locally. So please reach out to us. There is a steep curve to get into the semiconductor industry, but we should do that. We should localize so that there is a local ecosystem that benefits from that. Yes.
Our success in the semiconductor industry is going to be how well we create the ecosystem locally, and it can be some participation from global suppliers playing locally as well as in-house development. So there can be so much difference. We talked about leapfrog, so good ideas to come from local suppliers to really create leadership here.
All right.
Hi, my name is Vijay. My name is Vijay from Gantrek Freelance Network. My question is about the second side of the coin of semiconductor industry, that is a system design. So I talk to many professionals in the field. Today, if you look at the curriculum, it's basically in silos. Electrical guy knows only electrical, mechanical guy knows only mechanical. So there has to be a holistic curriculum where people learn all aspects of product design. That is when you start seeing some innovation coming up. So, for example, you take a electric traction drive for a two-wheeler or a three-wheeler. 70% of the electrical design is actually mechanical engineering. Product design is mechanical engineering, thermal management, robustness, reliability. But electrical engineers don't learn that. If you have a holistic curriculum, that's when you can expect some innovation coming. So second part of my question is, I work with many tier 2, tier 3 colleges. The products, the students coming out of there, the quality of the education is not up to the mark where they can actually contribute to the industry. So institutions like IITs maybe needs to play a role in designing the curriculums and basically percolating into the tier 2, tier 3 colleges.
Swaroop, you want to take
how can we work on that?
You want to take this?
What is the question?
How are you going to produce good talent?
Yeah. Thank you, Vijay. So couple of observations. One is that the training programs that we are talking about, at scale with our educational outreach. So there are a few users for it, constituencies for it. One is industry, working professionals. The other, we had the Gujarat college teachers come in, so that's another constituency. A third one is trainers in teachers in polytechnics, right? So we are not necessarily we are not the best people to directly teach polytechnic students. We don't have that training ourselves, but we could train the trainers there, and that is a standard thing that we do. Yeah, and the other, on the system side, right, I wanted to sort of draw in an example from a related but different domain, e-mobility. So IIT Bombay is coming out with a center, and one of the first things they have done, even before they became a center, is to offer a course which had global over-enrollment. And they are integrating, because they need to, as you can imagine, they need to integrate aspects of mechanical and electrical engineering. So point well taken and acknowledged, and we are on it, I would say.
Okay, I must end. I'm hungry. I just want to close with an observation that, one of the things about elephants and humans is that the elephant is much bigger than a human. And so when you have multiple human beings such as these talk about the elephant, they describe various elements of it, but they're only talking about the elephant. So now I end the panel and say that our challenge is to make this elephant dance. Thank you very much for attending. And we have a lunch break now, and you should go to one of your chosen research sessions on this floor by 2 o'clock. Please be there before 2, and until then, network and have lunch and enjoy yourselves. Yeah, there are a few who are invited, and if you're one of them, you should have received an email. We also have a meeting, a closed-door meeting.